something out of this world, Dr. London.
He's the destroyer! Oh, help me!
You've been touched by the hand of God.
Unspeakable, Beyond the Walls of Sleep. Let me just say, this movie is not going to be for everyone. In actual fact, I would liken this movie to a car crash. It is a real mess, but you can't help but look at it. This is written, directed, produced by Chad Ferrin, and he's actually done a few H.P. Lovecraft movies over the last few years. And yes, this is an H.P. Lovecraft adaptation, and well, an interpretation, shall we call it. And it's actually got a reasonable cast. Heading up the cast, you've got Edward Furlong, you've got Biling, Gingerlin Allen, Steve Railsback, Robert Miano, to name but a few. Now the story, I'll try and do my best here to give you a sensible synopsis of what the story is. So it focuses on two doctors primarily, one of which played by Edward Furlong. And he is an expert in sleep studies. And he is called to this psychiatric institute, asylum, where there is a patient who has like dissociative disorder, like a split personality. But when he changes, he physically changes. His DNA changes. He has visible differences in his kind of like appearance. And Edward Furlong's character has never seen anything like it. He can't quite understand what what's going on here. And this patient has been incarcerated for like 25 years, and he was accused of child molestation. So Edward Furlong has a kind of experimental kind of therapy which he tries, and finds out that this guy is actually infested with like kind of an alien parasite, and this alien parasite wants to mate with its kind of female counterpart, and it also has the ability to turn people around him into kind of zombies. And then we get, you know, all hell break loose when ultimately this infected individual gets out, and weird stuff starts to happen. That's kind of all I'll say on the plot here. That will give you the broad idea about where this movie's going. So, let's discuss what works. Now, like I said, this movie is a very low budget film, and it shows. But boy, is it weird. I mean, I wouldn't call this an art house film. It's very much like an exploitation film in some ways. It is very sexually orientated, shall we say. This possessed individual wants to reproduce with its female counterparts, and it thinks the female counterpart is in its daughter. So, you know, you can get where maybe the problems are with this one. But we've also got penis monsters, various kind of extreme but very low budget sort of imagery. It's nuts, this film. Absolutely bananas. So if you just want to see weird stuff on screen at a relatively fast pace, then check this movie out. But it can't be said that this movie isn't trying to be creative. I mean, it's just like all the kind of like sort of films that I watch here in this channel, many of them are cheap films, but a lot of them are just like quickly produced with minimal effort, sort of like no imagination. It's a bunch of girls being chased around a house by a masked killer, and it's like the same thing over and over. Credit where credit is due here. This film is definitely not that, and it is like such an odd story and such weird visuals. You can't help but be somewhat kind of caught up in it. And you have got a fairly kind of recognisable, a little bit past their sell-by date kind of stars here. But nonetheless, it's nice kind of seeing all these sort of character actors some of which are in small parts. Edward Furlong has a kind of a, he's the main character here, so he's got a large role. And there's some sort of fun practical effects. There's some kind of fun but very cheap kind of like VFX as well. And you'll be surprised how far this movie goes in some respects. Not so much in gore, but just the kind of the visual imagery on display here. I was thinking, boy, this isn't something you see every day. Let me just kind of say that. And it's actually kind of funny in places. It actually has a few kind of funny moments within this film. I would say genuinely kind of quite funny moments. I think the soundtrack's pretty good. I mean, I'm not a person who particularly notices a lot of soundtracks sometimes, but this one I actually did notice and kind of quite sort of appreciated. And it's definitely a stylistic movie. I mean, Chad Ferrin, as I say, he seems to be on a Lovecraft kick, and he obviously has reverence for the material, but he also has these kind of B-movie sensibilities that he sort of injects in it all as well. So it's like massively schlocky, and as I say, it's like an exploitation film in many ways, but has that sort of element of kind of like goofy fun, as well as being sort of quite extreme in some respects as well. So there you go. Now, what doesn't work with this film? It's almost, I kind of said it all really. It's sort of like, it's very cheap. I mean, this movie's level of production value is very low, and you'll see it in things like some of the kind of like the digital effects, the kind of the sort of rudimentary sort of CGI, things like this on a kind of a technical scale. Sets don't look particularly good sometimes. There's some like you'll be thinking, how is this guy got a cell in the parking lot? Things like this. There's some kind of like goofier and like cost-cutting elements on display here. To be honest, the story is, as I say, it's based on an H.P. Lovecraft movie, but it's kind of all over the place. It's not really a story that you can kind of sit and think, this made me think about things. It's not really like that. Let me just put it like that. The story is, I think broadly speaking, you can follow the gist of it, even though there's so many sort of little offshoots and sequences that sort of feel like very sort of extended for some reason. Like there's a scene involving Bai-Ling towards the end, and it feels like it goes on forever, and it was really unnecessary to a degree, or at least didn't need to be this long. So it has these kind of like little sort of distractions here and there, which I feel keeps the narrative from being truly engaging. It's got a recognisable sort of face of cast here. There's quite a lot of people you recognise, but I'm not suggesting that these people are the greatest actors ever. And it looks like it was a relatively sort of quick shoot, and it almost seems like sometimes people are improvising, I have to say. Edward Furlong, it's nice to see him in a leading role. I know he's done a few movies here and there, but he doesn't really look like a doctor, I have to say. When he turns up, he's just like in jeans and an untucked shirt, thinking, surely you'd like wear a suit or something to play in this role. But no, it kind of looks like he's in his kind of like normal clothes and things like that. I do think there is an element of taste here for some. Let me just say there are some things here that are questionable in regards to taste. It is what it is, but that's less of a critique, more of just a warning really, that it's not going to be for everyone here. And it's kind of like, as I say, a messy film. It's just messy in production. The film's narrative is messy. The acting looks like it hasn't had lots of kind of takes and things. Generally speaking, the camera can be a bit erratic at times. So overall, it's kind of like a proper B movie in a way. Not, I would say, legitimately good, but it is kind of watchable, weirdly. I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.